You are listening to Moments Podcast with me, Shuang Cai. In this show, I am going to talk to artists, academics, industry practitioners, and entrepreneurs from a variety of backgrounds, each of whom is committed to imagining a better tomorrow and working to make it a reality. Some of their experiences are experimental, some are highly practical and ambitious. Most importantly, each dialogue is imaginative, because we want to engage in dialogue with people from all over the world who are curious about life, to enjoy a moment together, to seize the moment, to seize eternity. Join me and these amazing people and their experience life as it's meant to be lived. Hello everyone, welcome to Moments Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's from the UK as well. Nowadays he's doing creating Shakespeare in Shanghai Theatre Academy. As a tourist scholar or tourist professor, should I say that? But anyway, let's welcome Leon.
你好.
Very good Chinese. Do you want to do a little bit short introduction about yourself, what you have done in the past like 20, 30 years?
Okay, well, at the moment, I'm here to specialize in directing Shakespeare. I've directed 17 productions professionally of Shakespeare using 5 different languages. So my interest is global Shakespeare and, of course, UK and American productions. I also teach at LASALLE College of the Arts, University of the Arts, Singapore, where I am the Dean of Performing Arts. And before that, I was the president or the director, as we call it, of East 15 Acting School, University of Essex in the UK. So I direct other things, not only Shakespeare, many new plays, old plays, many different types of work. And before that, I was also artistic director of 3 different theatre companies in buildings in the UK.
Sounds very fulfilling life.
Busy.
Yeah.
And I write books about theatre.
Yeah. And so it sounds that your theatre career starts at very early time, back in 40 years ago?
Yes,
Should I say
right.
that?
Yes, I started
and you
young. Yes.
Yeah, and you started your career at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company after your graduation, right away, right?
That's right. After my MA, which I did in Canada, in Shakespeare, and before that I studied literature in the BA, and then I went into the Royal Shakespeare Company as assistant director.
So, my first question is, what do you feel the career that you have done in RSC or this period of journey has influenced you in terms of the work that you have created during that period?
Very much. Well, it more influenced my work in later years. But I learnt some of the fundamentals. I worked with fantastic directors, very famous directors and very starry actors who were very good with Shakespeare. And the assistant director at the Royal Shakespeare Company does quite a lot of advanced work. It's very different to an assistant director in many companies. So I was able to work very closely with the younger actors, give notes and sometimes do rehearsals with some scenes, but support the director and understand their vision.
And you probably traveled a lot back and forth between London and Stratford-upon-Avon, right?
That's correct. I was in Stratford for the first year and London for the second year.
Ooh. So what is an iconic piece of work from that time period for you?
Well, the most famous piece of work in that period was a production of an adaptation of a Charles Dickens novel called Nicholas Nickleby. It was a major piece of work from the RSC. There were 3 directors. I was the young director, the assistant director, and there were 2 other directors. One was Trevor Nunn, who was the artistic director of the company. And it used the entire company at the time. Normally they work on different productions, but this time it was all in one production.
Ooh.
I don't know how many actors there were, but over 40.
Over 40.
And it was adapted by a very distinguished playwright called David Edgar. But it was also, we devised as we went along, and he would write, sometimes devised, sometimes written. But the final production lasted 8.5 hours.
Ooh.
In two sessions, 4 and 4.5 hours. It performed in London and won almost every award you can imagine. And then it went to New York and won all the American awards. I was the assistant director, so of course I was supporting. It was not my work at the top. But it was a great learning experience.
And gave you kind of foundation of what kind of director you should be, right?
Yes, and also showing me that a huge project that hasn't been done before is possible. So I like big projects, I think, because of that. And the other work I did that was influential for later work was working with great actors like Ben Kingsley, Judi Dench, people like that who I could learn from, watching and talking to them.
Observing.
Yes.
And later on, as a director, you worked on cross-cultural projects all over the world, including like US, Canada, blah, 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 etc. It is important for cross-cultural theater directors to have a certain degree of understanding of cultures of 2 sides.
Very much so.
Yeah, so as to make a production that does not harm the original source of the art, not create misunderstanding about the blended cultures. Do you agree with such creative concept, or do you have your own creative concept of theater?
Well, it does depend on the actual project, because cross-cultural is a very general term.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's intercultural, transcultural. But in terms of me directing, for example, Shakespeare in another country, I have to do a lot of homework and understand the actors I'm working with, the designers I'm working with, and some of the cultural sensitivities. The UK is, you can be as crazy as you want. There are no barriers.
Yeah.
But in most cultures, there are some barriers, maybe political, maybe about showing too much of the body, maybe the jokes. You have to be sensitive to it, whereas not losing what's in Shakespeare. So you have to find a balance sometimes. What I do is work closely with the actors. I'm spoiled. I work in big companies, so I have an interpreter. Maybe an interpreter and a translator, and probably an assistant director who probably speaks English. And, this package means I have all kinds of support. With some companies, the leading actor is often a great person to talk with and ask questions and challenge.
Yeah. You mentioned about the interpreter, right?
Yes.
Especially relating to language.
Yes.
How do you balance different or 2 languages when you direct a show? It's quite hard because you are not native speaker of that kind of language. How do you find a way to?
I've developed a whole method of I challenge always the translation, even of a language I don't speak, through the interpreter, possibly director, assistant director working with me. I go line by line through the play and find out what the actor thinks the character is saying.
Is that what you mean by homework?
Yes. No, the homework's before I even arrive.
Okay.
But when I'm there, I ask each actor, we read a speak, I say, what does that line mean? Without looking at the script again. The actor will tell me from, say, the Chinese to the interpreter. The interpreter, without looking at the script, will tell me back in English what the actor is saying. And from what they're saying, I will know if the translation is correct, or if the actor has understood it, or is the interpretation different to what I think. And so from that, I can talk and work out, and sometimes change the translation, even if I don't speak the language.
And it's totally fine to change the original context or text,
yes,
right?
We must.
We must.
Well, because if you have a translation that is not working, or sometimes a translator has to choose, can they focus on the character, the emotion, or the poetry, or storytelling? Where's the emphasis? Shakespeare, for example, does 5 different things at the same time, but the translator cannot in every language. So they make decisions.
Yeah.
But those decisions might conflict with me as a director, what I think we should do, or the actors. So you can take a translation. I'm still talking about Shakespeare. It's different with contemporary work.
Yeah.
And you can compare, like the work I'm doing this week with the directing group is looking at 2 translations of Romeo and Juliet, comparing them. And we discover a lot that both of them have got many things wrong. Or not wrong, but decisions in a different direction. So we talk about it and see if we can find a better word here or a better phrase there. But then it must feel like it belongs with the rest of the translation. So it's quite a complex task.
And you can never find a perfect
No.
performance, right?
No.
Always trying a new different
Yes.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a quick example if you want. With Romeo and Juliet, which I've directed 4 productions in 3 different countries. So I've kind of tackled with this question. And a lot of the problem is the translations are too poetic. Because Romeo and Juliet is a love story, the translators focus very much on verse. But actually, half the play is not like that. Half of it is comedy. That
Exactly.
becomes a tragedy.
Yeah.
But the comedy is often lost or minimized, which I think is a shame because Shakespeare wants to contrast the comedy, which is often very vulgar language. The jokes are very sexual, but that's contrasted with the sort of purity, if you like, of the love scenes.
Yeah.
And I've seen Romeo and Juliet in many countries, many cultures, and for me, it's always wrong. It's okay if you see it as an adaptation. Say, okay, forget about some of the original, we want to do this. That's fine. I mean, Shakespeare's not sacred. It's not religious text, you know. But if you want to be close to the original, then you have to work through and find ways to express the missing parts.
Oh, yeah. Especially like, I think in China or in Asian countries, sometimes we just focus on the poetic part.
Very much so in Asia, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they just want to show the audience, oh, Shakespeare is that. Shakespeare is very much poetic.
Exactly. and sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
And even the poetic scenes, like the famous scene in the balcony where they talk, it's a long scene, but there's many twists and turns in it, and they're mischievous with the language. It's playful. It becomes more serious later in the scene. But actually, and the other thing that's interesting is Juliet's got the better verse all the way through the play until after Romeo is banished and Tybalt is dead. Then Romeo, he improves his verse. And by the end of the play, he speaks magnificently. But he learns from Juliet how to be more precise and serious with language. It's like she's his teacher.
And I remember last time you mentioned we can see the verse or the transformation of the power of the roles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you are in Shanghai and you are teaching a group of directors how to create Shakespeare's plays. What do you think is at the heart of essence and the core of Shakespeare theatre for artists or directors or actors from another culture to pick up?
Well, there's many things, but the most important is detail. When you're working with Shakespeare, you're dealing with a very dense, compacted text where the words mean something. They never don't mean something. The most important thing is detail, because many actors working in translation, they work with that translation, but the translation is missing many, many things, including clues for actors about character, changes of rhythm, things that are very important from the original, that then you need to find another way to express them in the translation. And that's a very detailed journey. It doesn't happen quickly. Beyond that, there's many ways of doing Shakespeare. On this course, for example, I'm changing whether it's in a big space, a small space, even open air. And what are the things you have to do as a director to adapt to different environment?
Working with the artist here,
Yes.
with the group of people upstairs,
Yes.
what qualities do you see in Chinese directors or artists? How far is the distance between these qualities and Shakespeare's play? Or if we want Chinese directors to create Shakespeare plays better in the future, what else can we do or can they do?
Well, they're a good group. Some of them are very experienced, others have no experience. So it's a very mixed level group. Some of them are actors wanting to understand about directing. So there's many different things happening at the same time. They're very good, but the strength is they're curious, they're willing to listen and think about new ideas, and they're also hungry. They really want to be here. This is a long program, 4 weeks intensive Shakespeare with a foreign director is very demanding, but they're giving up a lot of things to be here. So they're hungry for work. And I think their curiosity is excellent. Of course, technically, not everybody's as advanced as the others. That it varies. But I think we're trying to have fun with it and not only be serious academic about it, but actually enjoy it. And that, I feel, is my job to do that.
Can I say that your job is giving them the inspiration of what Shakespeare is or what his plays is like?
Yes.
And let them to explore more and
Exactly.
further.
Yes, I feel that I can give them a few thoughts and tools, like tools to do a job.
Methodology.
Yes, you could try this, you can try this, you could try this. But then they go off into groups and try things. And then we bring them back, and then there's feedback, comments, critique. So they get used to learning what other people think and maybe changing what they're doing a little bit. So it's a method.
Let's wait and see tonight's show.
Yes, but tonight really is really just a work in progress.
Yeah. If one day you are able to giving an offer to choose to rehearse a Shakespeare's play as a director in mainland China, wherever it is, in Xi'an, in Shanghai, in Beijing, whatever, which one would you pick? Which one would you choose? Why?
It would depend entirely who the actors are. Are they young actors, very experienced actors? Have they done Shakespeare before? Or what kind of theatre is it? A studio theatre, a huge theatre with a big audience? All those things determine which play might work best. There are some plays I like more than others, of course. But really, I don't choose a play when someone says, which play do you want to do? If it's Hamlet, I want to know who is going to play Hamlet, the leading performance. Because without the right actor, don't want to do it. Well, again, I presume it would be young actors, student actors. I would probably pick either an early play, not Romeo and Juliet. I've done it 4 times. I don't want to do it again. But there's other plays that are good for a younger Two Gentlemen of Verona, for example. It's very light, fun, and lots of roles for young people. So that was quite a good choice. I wouldn't do King Lear, Othello, Hamlet, because those plays need a different maturity at the center of the plays. I could do one of we call the late plays, which you can play with a younger or older cast, like Pericles, for example. They're not so well known, so people don't suggest them. But that would be good. I've just finished a production with young actors equivalent to STA final year acting students in Singapore. And I did a play called Titus Andronicus.
Not that famous.
It's not that famous, and it's his first play, and it's got a lot of violence in it, and it's quite ragged. It needs work on the text, but it's very good for I had a big company there of 27 actors. I had a live musician, an excellent professional drummer, and I wanted to use drumming for many reasons. And I also had a first-class choreographer because I included some interesting movement work. So I had that facility. And the text to speak is not so difficult.
Yeah.
So that was a perfect play for that environment.
But will you choose a specific Shakespeare's play to have the sense of the connection to contemporary, like Chinese culture or contemporary Chinese audience, or in other countries with like Singapore audience culture?
Well, generally yes, but not exclusively. I think a Chinese company don't have to make it Chinese. They could make it Japanese. And then that would raise all kinds of questions about the culture they're talking about, and attitudes, and maybe competitiveness and history. But it might be a good test. They might want to set it in London. Even though they're Chinese actors, there's no reason that it has to be in China. I mean, often that's what the actors and the company want, which is fine. Of course, for me, it must relate to contemporary life.
Yeah.
But where it is set could be different. Titus Andronicus, which in Shakespeare's play is set in ancient Rome, we set it in a contemporary world. And for the poster and the images, it looked like a war zone in Gaza, Ukraine. We didn't say that.
But audience can feel about it.
You see the images. And I think that puts you in a world. The costumes they wore were very contemporary, but not culturally specific to one country, but contemporary. And felt perhaps somewhere in the world where there's a war. But we try to avoid specific referencing for that production. And I think that's another approach. For me, that's more exciting, really. I think China tends to set Shakespeare, for example, in its own past. The Song dynasty is a common one. The costumes are beautiful, and that's all fine. But I think maybe that doesn't get the best detail from the play. It can do. So I'm not saying it's wrong. But for me, that would not be quite so interesting. To me, there's no point in doing Shakespeare in Elizabethan British costume. To me, that's a waste of time. It's controversial.
No need.
But I just would never try to reconstruct.
Yeah. I think nowadays, most of the companies are doing Shakespeare in a modern way, not in wearing.
I think so. And for me, that's good. It's good.
Wearing the suits, wearing the T-shirts,
it's fine. It's fine, but it can be set in the past. Some productions set in the future. There's many options.
In a meta world.
Yes, that's right. But I try to pick something that has a real feeling of society, wherever it is. And you need the relationships between, if it's a king and a servant, you don't need to have a very strong ritual, but you need to understand there is a difference.
Exactly. So my last question is, the Globe and Mail once commented on you, all the world is his stage, all the world is your stage. Doesn't that conclude your career very well? And what do you think? How will you conclude your career?
I hope so. And actually, if I remember, the Globe and Mail, I was bringing to, it's not the National Theatre of Canada, but it's like the National Theatre of Canada. And they tend always to look to Britain, Europe, America. And I brought them productions that had strong other elements, some from Asia. From my work in other countries, I brought in different images, different styles to add to what they already do. So I think that's what the Globe and Mail was surprised or interested in.
And you are the bridges of different cultures.
I try to be, but bridges sometimes take you to places you want to go, and sometimes those you don't expect.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and hopefully we can see you in the future in London or in Singapore or in any other places in the world. Somewhere. And your shows, your performance, your productions.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bye.